This is another podcast. It's not going to be like the podcast that you may have listened to in the hybrid fitness racing space because it's not purely a hybrid fitness racing podcast. Sure, I do participate in high rocks. I've done a couple of deck fits, but I want to talk about the things that I think are important that may not necessarily be covered by some of the things that I follow. And this is my opportunity to kind of share some things about myself, share some things about my idea and why I'm even here talking to you and what I want to see in the future. This is the first episode of Now Until Up, and I am Victor Purcell. Now Until Up is about, being active, right? Activity is not necessarily fitness. Activity is being involved in the things that you say that you care about, being involved in the things that you claim to be a part of, the communities you claim to be a part of, and doing things continuously to improve yourself, to improve the standard, and to move those communities forward. So what I hope to do here is talk about my experiences and how, the people that I come across are moving things forward in their community and how I may be moving things forward and, focusing on the now, but let's focus on now until we're up, right? We use our past as a reference point. We don't use our past as a standard, right? You need to make sure that you pay attention to what I'm saying here, because I don't want you here to just think that I'm here to talk about myself. This is for you. This is about curiosity, right? I'm a curious person. I try different things out. I don't try everything out, but I try things out. Like, why am I even racing in, this shirt here? It's a High Rocks World Championship shirt. I did qualify in the 21-22 season to race in Las Vegas and represent the United States in the men's pro division in the 35 to 39 age group category. And it was fun. I didn't race as well as I planned to, but it was a good opportunity. It was a good experience. And, I did what I did. And now I moved on and started training for the next thing, right? Who am I? So I'm an athlete. But I also consider myself an informed consumer. I'm someone who asks questions. I'm someone who I think out loud. So when I'm talking to people, if I think about it, you'll probably hear me, make a comment on it, or I'll ask you an additional thing about it. So I think that line of thought of being curious is important. And it's important for people who decide to start media platform talk about certain topics, because it's like nobody really wants to hear you preach about what you know that you know. I want to talk about the things that I think I know, but also ask questions. So I do plan on having people that I come across that I built relationship with on this platform, but sometimes it'll just be me. I want to talk about some of the top things that I've learned in this space. I'm not going to talk about those things right now, but we will be getting into that. I do have a list of things that I've written down, and over time, it's just things that, I journal after some of my races. And so there are things that happen consistently and you learn from them, and then you decide, let me pivot from that, or you decide to lean in on it, right? So you learn things the more that you race. I want to talk about some of my ideas and some of the predictions based on my experiences. I think there's a lot of discussion around so what makes a hybrid fitness race? So what if I was to create my own race, right? I think those are cool topics, right? And what do I predict will be the future of the industry as things evolve? It's a new evolving space. So I want to be a part of that community. I want to be a part of that infrastructure. So here we are. I want to talk about some discussions around diversity and representation at all levels of the sport. And I don't look at sports as a platform where you need to like set aside positions to make sure it's diverse. Like you compete, the best person is at the start line. So when I see the Elite 15, just to be frank, everybody's in the Elite 15 in High Rocks is of European descent at some point, right? That's fine with me, but I know that's not necessarily representative of the talent in the globe, right? And but as the sport grows, that may change. It may not change. Who knows? I don't know. But I think there's room for representation, whether it be at the start line in the elite space, or whether it be in management and media and platforms like this, to have different points of view. And my point of view isn't going to be fully rooted in performance and talking to people who are in the Elite 15 or in whatever elite group that you want to consider, because I respect all of those guys and women. And I think that you, if you want to grow an institution and you want to grow a space, you got to look around you. And I pay attention to what's around me, and I see the thing growing. I see people coming in from other spaces that weren't traditionally endurance athletes. And if this thing continues in the next 5 to 10 years, who knows what it'll look like. It's a cool sport. So I want to introduce you to some ideas and some experiences from some people that I've come across. Like I've trained with different people in the DC area. I've met people at different races, and these people are interesting. Like you look at some of the footage of, people racing on YouTube, some of the live coverage, and you don't really know these people like you may think you do because you see them. But if you talk to people, if you show up to these events, if you look into the background of some of these individuals, you realize like you got engineers, you got people running their own companies in this space. You got people with different backgrounds that just show up and do the damn thing. So definitely want to introduce you to some of those individuals and some of those experiences. So there's a long list of things, right? I will be putting out an email newsletter that will be a little bit more specific, right? It will have some links to some of the things that I listen to, some other podcasts, some highlights from books that I may be reading or have read, or just some like recent news in the space. Or it is not just going to be hybrid fitness. I have friends that do other sports, right? And I think that those individuals should also be a part of this platform, because when we talk about hybrid fitness, people are coming from different avenues because it is new. So they're coming from over here, they're coming from over there. So the more that we bring in other individuals into platforms like this, the broader the sport will get, right? So that's not going to be everything, but that's just enough for right now, for the first show, to just give you a little bit of where my mind is. If things pivot, you got to allow things to pivot, right? But this is where we're at today. So let's talk about me. I'm Victor. I was raised in Hartford, Connecticut. I spent my summers in West Virginia. My parents split up when I was young. But so I grew up in the Northeast, but I spent my summers in the mountains of West Virginia, southern West Virginia. Both sides of my family are coal miners, right? Both of my grandfathers. So, yeah, it's an interesting experience growing up. Spent a little time in Ohio, too, with my dad and some of my siblings there. But I'm really a Hartford kid, So I went to the military when I was 18, and 9/11 happened same year. So basically, yeah, life-changing time. When the world was changing, I was in a malleable period of my life. I was in a combat unit, field artillery. My MOS was field artillery tactical data systems specialist, and yeah, it was good times. It was some crazy times. I saw some things at a young age that I didn't necessarily understand at the time. Um, I'm not one of those people who has used my military experience to like define me. A lot of people that meet me don't know that I was in the military unless I like bring it up or unless they ask me. Uh, some people do know. Some people that were in the military may know after being around me for a little while. But generally speaking, I think it's um, everybody's experience in the military is different. For me, from being 18 years old, getting deployed to Mosul, Iraq at 19, it kind of shaped me at a young age during a time when I was trying to figure things out, right? Uh, and I think that, I've met lifelong friends. I've had experiences that have informed me in some of my decisions as a older adult and not a teenager still. And yeah, it was interesting time. So from there, I got out, did a semester in school, and decided to go into nuclear security for a little while. And it was like a paramilitary security company, and it was like an 8-week training school. You're on a firing range doing like tactical drills, a lot of classroom work. It was mainly classroom work, but it was an interesting period. But that was like my first job out of the military. But I ended up transitioning from that because it was a lot to do that and go to school, and I wanted to focus on being in school full time. So I ended up graduating from North Carolina Central University in 2008. Shout out to the Eagles. And but I was in the corporate security space basically that entire time. And yeah, it was interesting time. But then I ended up moving to Washington, D.C. in '09, where I started in the career field that I'm in now. And not to go too deep into that, but I'm currently a civil servant. I've worked as a consultant before, similar skill set, but different side of the house. I've been an analyst, been a consultant, but now I'm a supervisory contracting officer. I have an unlimited warrant, and I am able to award contracts basically at an unlimited amount of money on behalf of the taxpayer. So I supervise other senior contracting officers and some non-contracting officers, and yeah, it's a very that field ebbs and flows. Sometimes it's fast paced, sometimes it's not. Managing people can be challenging at times, but I definitely enjoy the work more so than I did when I started. I did take a couple of years off from that space, and I went into the music industry because I've been doing music basically my whole life in some capacity. But I ended up working as a audio engineer. Did a few classes as an audio engineer, but ended up working full time for almost 2 years as an audio engineer in Atlanta. And that was fun. Like I interned as well for a couple days a week at a major studio there, where I got to be in sessions with like Usher and 2 Chainz and Pharrell and all these people. I wasn't really doing much, but like running for things for them. But I may have set up the sessions and whatnot and broke things down. But that was an amazing experience. But I realized like, this isn't really my calling. I still do audio related things. Like I've built a podcast studio at Howard University's medical school last year as a subcontractor for like a side project. So anyway, I do a lot of different things. My experience is broad. I could go deeper into that, but I think that yeah, that says a lot. And another thing, this is not my first podcast. So I did have a podcast that started in 2016 with my co-host at the time, Austin. Shout out to Austin. That's my guy. It was called Intellectual Cool. And basically that podcast started in 2016, but we were doing events from like 2014 up until pre-pandemic, right before the pandemic, where basically there were events that were catered towards artists, intellectuals, and professionals, right? And in DC. And there's a lot of educated, artsy people up here. And we basically provided a platform where basically people could use dialogue, and we had interactive things, basically to challenge some of our generation's like biggest questions and to try to break old habits in our community and all these different things. So it was like a conversation-based event platform that transitioned into being a podcast. And the podcast, we had all types of guests on there, international guests. We would record out of the Eaton Hotel in DC. We didn't start there, but they asked us to move our podcast over to their space when they opened that hotel. So I've done the podcast thing before. It is very time intensive. We did a 2-hour show every week, and but now I'm back into it, and but it's a whole different experience. I've done different things since then, and now you're gonna get to tap into some of those things, tap into some of my experiences. And again, this is the intro. If you got any questions, feel free to hit me up at Vic Purcell, VICK PURCELL, on Instagram, or you can message now_until_up on Instagram and follow that page and sign up for the newsletter. I will be pushing that link out on the on my platforms, and the newsletter is going to be dope. I think that's going to be the real meat and potatoes of this thing. I think there's a lot of information out there in the ether, but I do believe that writing is a big part of something that I like to do. And sometimes, like, some of the things I may hear about on other platforms, maybe it's not appropriate to talk about it necessarily on that episode. Say I have a guest or whatever the case may be, but it may be important for me to share, because this is all about sharing, right? I'm sharing information with you all, and it's going to be a good time. So again, now until up, that's the intro. Hopefully you like what you've heard, and hopefully you decide to subscribe to my channel.